So, we already did the recap. Now it's time for chapter 2. All color drained from Luke's face. His body felt numb. His mouth went dry. He had to warn the others, but it was as if his throat had constricted. Try as he might, no sound came forth. Just then, he was startled by a high-pitched whine off to his left. Another, and another. He looked up and saw that the German planes were now overhead and were unleashing their ordnance. It seemed to be happening in slow motion. He could see bomb bay doors opening. He could see the long black clouds spilling out and raining down toward the towns and paltry few French units of Frank Sedan. Down came the bombs. They were getting larger and larger. They were reaching terminal velocity. He knew he should run. He knew he had to hide, but he could not. He just stood there, frozen in place. One by one, the bombs began to land, closer and closer until one scored a direct hit at the church. The force of the blast sent Luke sprawling backward, nearly crushing him against a brick wall and leaving him crumpled to the ground. The sound was deafening. He had never heard anything so loud. More bombs fell. He watched as a young woman running for her life thrown through the plate glass window of a patisserie. He saw others disintegrate before his very eyes as the bombs kept falling, and carnage grew. Adrenaline began coursing through his system. Luke's first thought was of the church. Nicholas was in there. He had to pull him out of the wreckage and get him back to his family. He started heading for the church, but as he approached the roaring flames, he watched in horror as the steeple collapsed. Then the roof and then the walls imploded as yet more bombs decimated both the church and the buildings around it. The Nazis were carpet bombing Sedan, and soon whole portions of the town were blazing infernos. Nicholas was dead. There was nothing Luke could do to save him now. That was much clearer. But what of his family? Luke turned and ran back into the house. He could hear screams, and he began shouting for people to follow him. Some listened, some did not, but he couldn't wait. They had no time to spare. Scooping up Jacqueline in his arms, he grabbed Monique by the hand and ordered her to come with him. She was sobbing, asking for Nicholas, but Luke didn't dare tell her. Not yet. He feared she would not come if she knew he was dead. They had to leave now. They had to get to his truck. They had to flee Sedan before the Nazis entered the town. "Follow me!" he shouted, though he could barely hear himself over the excessive explosions and the raging fires. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw two fathers grab their families and pull them towards the door. The families followed three of them into the streets, now littered with fallen bodies and body parts. The wounded and the frightened were everywhere, and people huddled against walls that were still standing. Luke was running. His truck was parked 2 blocks away. It was a pickup, almost new, and unless it had been hit, it would run. He could fit all of them in the back, and at that moment that was all he was. "Don't stop!" Luke shouted to the ragtag team. "Keep moving!" Just then, he spotted a German Messerschmitt in the sky ahead of him. It was firing its machine guns and seemed to be aiming right for them. He ordered everyone to dive in the alleyway behind him, and they all took cover just as the fighter roared by, killing all those remaining. Then came another explosion, just in time. He pressed his body down and Jacqueline, doing everything he could to protect them. He knew they couldn't stay him down. He could hear the German tanks rumbling up the road from the east. The Nazis were approaching far more quickly than he expected. He had to keep moving. Checking the roof for injuries, Luke decided they were okay for now. He quickly ducked his head out of the alleyway to see if the coast was clear. It was, but he could also see the flaming wreckage where Monique and Nick's house had stood a moment before. It had taken a direct hit, and now it and all the souls who stayed inside were gone. "Come on, everyone, we need to go now," Luke ordered. turn to the right, run through the park, don't stop, don't look back. My truck is the red one. When you get there, jump into the back, and I'll be right behind you. Go!" One by one, the group climbed to their feet, moved to the corner, and sprinted for the truck, all but Monique. "I can't leave Nick," she cried. "We have to find him." Luke hesitated for a moment. He had no choice. He had to tell her. He sat Jacqueline down, and then he said bluntly and without emotion, "He's dead." "What? No, he's helping people." Luke grabbed Monique by the shoulders and stared into her eyes. "Monique, listen to me. Nick is dead." No, he's..." said Monique. "Listen, Monique," Luke said. "Nick is dead. He's gone. He was trying to help people. He helped carry a wounded man into the church. I was about to follow him there by myself, but before I got there, the bombs began to fall. They destroyed the church. They killed everyone inside, and I watched it happen. I'm sorry, but he's gone." Just as Luke feared, when he collapsed in his arms, she was sobbing uncontrollably, crying. No. Luke set her down gently, then glanced across the park. The rest of the group had reached the truck. They were waiting for him. They were counting on him. He again stood up, scooped up Jacqueline in his arms. Then he pleaded with Monique to come with him. He had to go, but she would not budge. She collapsed in a heap on the ground, wailing. Luke turned and started toward the truck. Jacqueline screamed, "Mommy, Mommy!" The girl struggled to break free to go back to her mother, the only parent she had left. But Luke held his knees tighter and ran all the faster. As he approached the pickup truck, a 1939 Ford Import, he could see everyone huddled in the back. He could see the horror in their eyes, the shock that he would be so heartless as to leave his own sister in a war zone and rip her from her little girl. But he had no time for sentimentality or explanation. He reached the truck and quickly handed Jacqueline to one of the mothers who knew her best. Then he raced around to the other side of the truck, fumbled for his keys, unlocked the cab, and jumped into the driver's seat. 3 seconds later, he was gunning the engine and they were. One explosion after another ripped through his body. Those residents who were not dead were running for their lives, heading for the countryside on the flimsy premise that they could outrun the Nazi war machine. Anyone with a car or truck was on the move as well, with whatever valuables in town to grab. But now vehicles clogged every available street out of town, and were seeing ducks from the Luftwaffe came swooping down to strafe them with 2 mm cannon fire. Luke, however, was not following them. Instead, he raced back to the corner where he had left his sister. Reaching the spot, he slammed on the brakes, jumped out, leaving the engine running, and ran over to me. He was still weeping and shivering against the brick wall, with no time to defend her. He grabbed her by the arms and pulled her to the truck, and then opening the passenger side door, he pushed her inside and slammed the door shut. Back in the driver's seat, he slammed his own door and hit the gas. "Oh, Dad!" he yelled to the people in the back, then turned to me and ordered her to do the same. He began driving, but he could not see. He could see that to the west, the road heading toward the main bridge across the meadows was jammed with cars and trucks and motorcycles of every kind. There didn't appear to be any limit. He dared not to get stuck in the traffic jam, nor did he have any intention of letting anyone who was killed be captured by the Nazis. That was a death sentence to me. So he jammed the truck into first gear, then second, and raced along the eastern outskirts of town. Perhaps the town's other bridge, Point Neuf, was not yet jammed. It was their only hope, but they didn't have much time. As he sped down on one side of the street after another, zigzagging his way through the town, he could see the enemy forces wherever they approaching from his right. Bombs continued dropping all over him, and he found himself drenched in sweat. Just then he heard an artillery round go whizzing over the truck. A split second later, a small grocery store erupted into flames. Distracted, he made a wrong turn. He headed into cul-de-sac and didn't realize it until he had gotten to the end. Screeching to a halt and praying for everyone in the back was still safe, he threw the pickup truck into reverse and did a K-turn and retraced his path. When he got back to the cross street, Rue de Pierremont, he took a hard left. heading once again for Cancun. The good news is that at the moment there was no one else on the street. It was deserted as far as I could see. Luke went to the side where the crowd came from. Screaming, I got from happening in the back of the truck. Just then, Monica unexpectedly stopped crying. She craned her neck to see what the commotion was about, and then she went to shoot. "Look, behind you!" she shouted. The first word she had uttered since Luke put her in the truck. Luke quickly glanced in the rearview mirror and gasped. A German tank was bearing down upon them. He was stunned to see it already in town, and even more stunned that it was no more than 100 meters away. Machine gun fire opened up behind him, and with it came more screams. Trying to take any basic action, he began swerving back and forth across the empty boulevard, but he knew it wasn't enough. Rounds of ammunition kept through the tailgate of the truck and even the cab, forcing him to duck down repeatedly even as he fought to maintain the control of the vehicle. He hit the gas, trying to open up the distance between them and the tank, but he knew he had to get off this road. The machine guns kept firing, and he suddenly realized they were heading straight for a complex of army barracks near the heart of the town that was experiencing a withering bombing campaign. He glanced back again and saw the tank lowering its hand and preparing to fire. Seeing a sign of prayer that God would have mercy on them all, he again shouted for everyone to hold on. Then slammed on the brakes, downshifted, and took a hard left onto some boulevard whose name he did not catch. As he did, he heard the tank fire and felt the projectile go whistling behind them. The resulting explosion rocked the vehicle, but they kept on driving, weaving through the streets that looked completely empty. The sector of Sedan was now a ghost town, and Luke hoped the bridge was just as clear. Moments later, they came around the bend. He could see Pont Neuf ahead. It wasn't empty. The roads leading to it were filling with vehicles. More and more people were heading this way, but the traffic was moving, and they weren't far from the bridge now. The road shook from one explosion after another. German planes roared overhead, and Luke wondered where the French Air Force was. Why weren't the Nazis being engaged? It would take time for ground forces to launch a counter-offensive and try to hold, perhaps retake Sedan. But why weren't the Germans being encountered in the air? Finally, they reached the bridge. A flash of panic rippled through Luke's body. He wondered what would happen if the Germans bombed the bridge while they were on it. But the thought passed quickly. The bridges were the very reason the Germans had targeted Sedan. Hitler's forces weren't going to bomb them. They were going to do everything they could to protect the bridge. Crossing Pont Neuf didn't turn out to be the problem. The problem was the other side. As he came around the bend, Luke found the road clogged with vehicles as of every type. Now, a new fear gripped him. No traffic jam had prevented their crossing the Meuse River, but one still might prevent them from successfully freeing the German forces, which were at the very moment overrunning the town. Seeing so many red taillights ahead, Luke slammed on the brakes. They came to a full stop. They were just idling there while the Nazi forces pressed the attack, closing on the bridge with every last minute. Luke had to make a decision. He knew he could not hesitate. He could not ponder his options. There was no time to weigh pros and cons. Every second wasted brought death closer. He made his choice and didn't think twice. He's going to get these people out of harm's way. He's going to get them to Le Chambon. He was going to hug Claire and his girls before the night was through. That was all there is to it. So he gunned the engine and turned the wheel hard to left. He hopped a curb and accelerated. He began driving over people's lawns, through the backyards, across their fields. No one was around to stop him. Everyone on this side of Sedan had already been evacuated. After a few minutes, he came to the end of the pavement and found the roads heading south. At first, he was glad to reconnect with the road, but he found it just as clogged as all the roads behind him. He didn't think twice. He veered into the lane of oncoming traffic and gunned the engine again. In any other circumstances, it would have seemed like an act of lunacy, but in this case, there was no oncoming traffic. The lane was empty. Not a soul was heading north towards Sedan and the Belgian border. Why on earth would they? His fellow Frenchmen were following the rules, staying in the southbound lane. They weren't even thinking of using the northbound one. Luke could think of nothing else. That's it. I'll update you if there's for chapter 3. Okay, that's it for today. Bye.